focused on helping kids make music.
Yeah, it's remarkable. You know, we look back at the history of a company like yours. It really reflects all the changes in communities and industry in a state like this.
Yeah, that's right. You know, going back before my time, there was a time during the First World War and the Second World War when they were selling, radios and record players and records. They had a huge record department.
So it was growing with technology,
yeah,
really.
Of course, it changed.
Yeah.
Changed over the years, and now we're dedicated exclusively to school band and orchestra instruments.
How many schools did you say?
About 450 programs.
Amazing.
And again, about 450 music teachers, band and orchestra teachers. Yeah.
We have to be mindful that Indiana, we refer to this area, this region, with love and affection as the band belt.
Absolutely.
You know, we are here where there are traditions of communities knowing that music education is just part of what you do when you're a young person.
It's
right. Really not an option, right?
Yeah, we're so fortunate to have it be, an important part of our culture in Indiana. I was talking yesterday at our meeting, which we're going to discuss a little bit. Those band and orchestra and arts parents are they're a force to be reckoned with in Indiana because the arts are so important, and it's a great tradition that we want to keep strong.
That's right. Well, when you were at in our beloved chairman at NAMM, you've even I think before you came onto the executive committee, you participated in your first fly-in, NAMM's first fly-in.
Yes.
And you went to visit your elected officials in Washington, D.C., and I actually really closely remember being with you for those first meetings. And then something really started to take hold in you over the years. And about a year ago, you organized the Indiana Arts Education Network together with the steering committee.
Right.
Right. Tell us about that, where you are with the arts education. It's officially the Indiana Arts Education Network that really was created as a social entrepreneur, social enterprise. Tell us about it. Where is it?
Well, we actually started about 3 years ago as a steering committee. Started with myself and Lane Valayo from Indiana Music Educators Association and Rusty Briel from the Indiana State School Music Association. Just sat down and had a conversation about where we were as a state, and there was a coalition that had launched prior to that and kind of launched and bubbled up and then kind of faded. And so, we wanted to see where we were and talk about how we could get to where we could do this advocacy thing at the state and local level on a sustainable basis. And so that conversation turned into another, and then we ultimately ended up bringing on a few more people onto the steering committee. We brought Matt Carter from Visit Indy, representing the city of Indianapolis, brought John Whitman from Yamaha, and Mike Campice, Director of Education from Conn-Selmer. And so we got together and we just started meeting and talking about where we are, what are the issues, and how can we have an impact. And we did that for about a year, really just getting together and getting to know each other and talking about where we needed to go. And you were along for many parts of that along the ride. And there was a time when we kind of didn't quite know where to go, and you gave us some wise counsel and said, go out and have a little mini listening tour.
A little feasibility study.
Right. So we did that. The 6 of us, by then Rusty had left, but the 5 of us, we all made appointments with elected officials and superintendents and just people in the community that we thought would have influence or information that could help us. And it was very, very helpful to go through that process because we learned a few things in that time. We learned that, number one, nobody's against arts education, right?
That's
Everybody's
right.
for it. That being said, a lot of people don't understand what it takes to make it happen, and so there's a lot of decisions that are made with unintended consequences. we found that our state legislature in Indiana is they're hesitant to mandate things, very conservative legislature. With that being said, there are still things that are legislated that have unintended consequences that impact arts education negatively. We learned that it's always about money, right?
Or you're told it's always about money.
Yes, we're told it's always about money, and yet that's not the whole picture, right? Some people feel like we don't have enough money. Others feel like it's a matter of priorities, but money is at the heart of the issue. So, we learned some valuable lessons, and then as we were getting about to that point, we heard that ESSA was about to pass.
Our federal our new education, the
Right.
December miracle, December 2015.
That's right. So, at that time we weren't really working at the state level. We weren't doing anything other than kind of studying and finding our way. And then ESSA passed, and we all, I was in the room when we kind of celebrated that and said, this is great, and then we realized that now the work that we had been doing for 10 years plus at the federal level needed to be done at the state level.
A new opportunity
Right.
really presented itself.
New opportunity, new responsibility, and that drove us to officially launch the Indiana Arts Education Network. We had our first meeting at DCI in 2016, so August of 2016. And the steering committee we just got our Rolodexes out and started reaching out to people that we thought might be interested. So NAMM members from around the state, education organizations, community organizations, anybody who we felt like had a stake in arts education, we invited them to the table. At our first meeting, we were so fortunate also along the way to be supported by NAMM and NAFME and Americans for the Arts. And so you and Lynn from NAFME and Jeff from Americans for the Arts came and spoke at our first meeting. And we kind of coalesced at that time around Indiana's plan for ESSA, because that was the issue of the day. And we really spent our first year focusing on that issue. So we launched the network. To use a couple of phrases that I've learned from you, from the get-go, we decided that our organization was going to be about action. We were not interested in meeting to inform, then just go away and nothing happens. And then in everything that we do, we are relentlessly positive, right? Because there's so much negativity in the way that people complain about what's happening with arts education that I think that drowns out the message. The message is a very positive message.
And the attention.
Right. So nobody wants to listen to whining, right?
Right.
And so...
Well, they do. Well, if you look at our maybe they do, but it's not going to come from us.
That's right. So, we try to couch our message in a positive way. We have tons of research to back up, why arts education is important. So we went to work on that and that's a very long story, but I'll keep it short. Went through some activities within the Department of Education. The election happened. We had to go back and do it again.
Yes, you had a little bit of a jagged journey there.
Right.
Yep.
But we kept at it. We were relentlessly positive. And long story short, the Indiana Department of Education released we had many opportunities to give them input. They released their draft in July of 2017, and we got nothing that we asked for. And we said, oh no. But we're relentlessly positive, right? And so we went back. There was a public comment period that we flooded the Department of Education with. And lo and behold, when the Indiana plan came out, they had several very strong statements that support arts education as part of the curriculum, not extracurricular, but co-curricular.
Which is huge, Mark.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, and this, the fact that someone was watching the process, the network was in place.
Right.
There was a commitment to monitor, and then there was a commitment to act.
Right.
It goes back to, in the old days, 6 calls could change a vote. You know, maybe it's now 600 emails will change, but you know, it's really, really significant what you did. And had that network not been in place,
That language would not be there.
there would have not been a way to put out that call to action, you know,
Right.
and someone sitting at an email and saying, send all,
Right.
right? So,
Yeah, so the connections that we made during that time with people in the Department of Education were extremely important because we had a face. You know, we had a relationship with someone that we could go to and say, hey, we talked about this. Now, we don't see it here. What's the problem?
and our community, our sector that represents X or Y number of school communities and kids and public school and parents, our sector is watching.
Right.
And we're waiting and we're insisting.
Yeah,
Oh,
so
that's great.
so you know, that was a
It's
great
really significant.
that was a great bravo moment for us.
Right.
But now we have to shift our focus, right? Because we're not an organization that's about ESSA. We're an organization that's about ensuring that, you know, all Indiana children reach their potential, and part of that reaching their potential is through arts education. And so now we've moved to the next step, which is, you know, it's always very organic, right? The way this thing morphs. So we had our next. We've had several meetings, but we had our meeting of the network yesterday.
You had a big meeting
Had a
yesterday.
big meeting yesterday.
A big agenda, big, strong agenda.
Right.
Yeah.
So we had it divided into two segments, one on state level advocacy and one on local and district level advocacy. We had two panels that spoke at the meeting. And the first panel, we had the chairman of the Indiana House Committee on Education and the ranking member of the Indiana Senate Committee on Education. So the two of the most important people at state level education were at our meeting. And then the third was Ken Folks, the Chief of Government Affairs for the Indiana Department of Education. So three really significant people.
I'd say you must have had a lot of security in the building for that one.
You know, it was great.
I would think so. Yeah.
You know, so we asked them a series of questions about, you know, where we are and how we can move forward. And, you know, I can't distill all that down in the time we have now. But a couple of the really important outcomes of that portion of the meeting for me were when we asked them about how best to move forward and advocate for what we believe in. And to a person, you know what it came down to? Face to face, one-on-one.
Come and see me.
Don't send,
invite me to your event.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Don't
build a connection.
Don't send me email blast with a bunch of email templates. That has its place, but if you really want to make an impact, make an appointment, come see me, or invite me to your place of business, and let's talk.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
terrific.
That was amazing.
3 for 3
Yeah.
basically said that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they all said that, and then we moved on to.
And if I can just say,
Yeah.
this is probably translatable to school board members, a local school board member.
Absolutely.
This is translatable to a superintendent's office.
Mhm.
You know, in other words, the local building a local support, a local coalition in a community of where 2 or 3 parents are gathered together that care about music education. A
Right.
coalition can be born, right? I mean,
Right.
it's and you know, in a relentlessly positive, respectful way, go and have those conversations about how can we make this opportunity better.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think what we're learning across the spectrum of advocacy is people really care about this.
Right.
And now, but we have to take that goodwill and turn it into some kind of tangible action.
Mm-hmm.
Like, don't cut the 4th grade string program,
Right.
and build the action for it.
One of the other things that Representative Banning said was, don't come to me with a complaint, come to me with a solution.
Right.
I thought that was extremely important because he gets so many people that just, you know, they shout out their complaints about, I don't like this, and they never say what the solution is.
And part of the solution is, from an elected official's perspective, is that a lot of people care about it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, even if the complexity of funding and, the road to making sure the right funding is there or the appropriations of funding is complex, if enough people say they care about it,
Right.
the professionals in the room, as the staffer of the member or the staff of a school board or curriculum, they will help with the solution.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's really great.
The other thing
what
at
you've learned
the
and what you're
state
leading.
level, they said that they do pay attention to the research, but the research is so much more valuable when it's presented one-on-one and with a story, with a personal story that goes along with it. And we saw that on both sides of the equation. Now, and then we went to the local panel. So we had, we also had Dr. Folks from the Department of Education, because he just joined the Department of Education this summer. Prior to that, he was superintendent of East Allen County Schools up near Fort Wayne. So we had him put on his superintendent's hat. We also had Dr. Rob Hayworth, superintendent of Elkhart Community Schools. And then Marcia Neal, who's a senior director of education for Yamaha, but recently she was the head of secondary music education for Clark County Schools,
Right.
in Nevada.
Yep.
And so we asked them similar questions about, what it takes to build and maintain and support arts programs. And we got different responses from them. Some things I'm still working on distilling it, but a few key things that I remember about those comments were, first of all, the similarities. One-on-one is way more powerful than email blasts and all of that. So again, it's down to one-on-one relationship, me talking to you, telling you about what's important to me and why. When they talked a little bit about the research piece, we found we learned something. The national research that we tend to rely on is less effective at the district level. What they said was more effective is show me how arts, the kids that are in my program, how they are different from the kids that aren't in arts, right? So show me some local statistics, and particularly about school culture, about behavior, about the culture of the school.
Attendance, graduation
Attendance,
rates, community response
exactly.
to
So
coming to concerts.
It was much less, kind of black and white hard facts and more heart issues, right? Which I found very interesting. The other thing that they mentioned, which I think it's something that gives us a couple of new tools in our tool belt in our messaging. They talked about the economic realities of running a school district. And one of the things that came up a couple of times was they talked about how they, as leaders of their school districts, are actually competing with other school districts. They're competing for students. Now they don't do that by trying to steal students away, but they're trying to build school districts that are strong enough that people want to move there and have their kids go to that school. And one of the most important strengths a school district can offer to attract families to the district is a strong arts program.
Wow.
That's
it was
huge.
just that clear.
Yeah, it's very
Yeah.
clear.
And they're putting it out there in a way. I haven't heard it kind of that clearly stated before.
Right. So again, to me, that tells me that we've got a way that we can tweak our message. And when we take that message to local school boards, we know their triggers, right? Their triggers are, of course, why is that important to them? I asked that question, and it came down to we need to attract people to our district because with the people come the dollars, and with the dollars come our ability to serve these students.
Or per student per capita state reimbursement.
Exactly.
This just boils down to economics.
Exactly.
That way. Well, you've given inspired me with a couple of ideas. We've talked to. There are some very interesting kind of program evaluation templates. And I know that there's been a bit of a movement for music and arts programs to produce sort of an annual annual report.
Oh, yeah.
You know, even the idea of a PowerPoint, this many kids are involved, this many kids have elected to go on to AP, this many kids have gone to our honors programs, this is many kids. So to make sure that just the basic metrics
Right.
that are just right in front of a program every day are sort of accumulated, you know, put in a presentation and shared on the school board level and whatnot.
Yeah, one of
You
the
know?
people at the table yesterday was a string teacher. She represents Indiana chapter of the American String Teachers Association.
ASDA, yeah.
And she says, this data that you're looking for, I've got it
It's
on my desktop right now.
Every day.
Yeah, I can see which students, I can look at each student and, my principal can tell you which ones have behavioral issues or attendance issues, and it's very easy to put that all in a grid and say, how do those who are actively involved in the arts compare to those who aren't. So the data is pretty easy to get to.
Especially now we've come through a period of such data-driven
Right.
collection of so much data.
Right.
Well, I think maybe we have a few more projects we could work on, Mark.
That's the way this thing works, right?
Isn't it? Right. And this is the year now, once the Indiana State Plan is reviewed and approved and adjusted, the next level is that every school district is supposed to submit a plan.
Right.
So again, there's a lot of opportunity within your network to influence that.
The work never ends, right? It's
Yeah.
evergreen.
So you've shared so much here. I guess some great best practices too. I mean,
Yeah.
you're by just going through it and creating it. I guess I want to dig a little bit deeper. What have you learned personally? What are, the things that you are, by leading this charge and organizing it and keep going back to the table and back, the highs and the lows. I mean, you were in the front row when we stood up and celebrated the passage of the ESSA at the Midwest Clinic. It was
Right.
just actually just within 10 days of that. And then we were together a year later with the election.
Yeah.
And, your governor becoming the vice president.
Right. Right.
And, of course, we've had a whole new set of kind of national challenges, which, for me, galvanizes our work even more.
Yeah, I think
I mean, we are it galvanizes the work to create these grassroots music and arts education opportunities are even more urgent.
Yeah, this was brought up at yesterday's meeting too, is that, I think it goes in line with that being relentlessly positive. You never stop doing the work because the people that you're connecting with change, right? And so at the state level, at the district level, people change. Elections happen, school board members come and they go, and you have to continually be in there and educate them and tell them, why. And so that's why the work never stops, right? It has to continue. It's not an event. It's a process, right? So we have to just keep at it.
Is that obviously that's one of your big takeaways, but any other big takeaways about the work? I mean, here you are running a very successful business,
Right.
a legacy business in Indiana, being a direct contact and employing a lot of people, caring for their families, all these things. And now you've kind of, you are now leading a statewide charge for an issue close to your business,
Right.
but at the same time with a whole nother skill set,
That's
right?
for sure.
A toolkit
Right.
that is not part of, some things cross over, communications, outreach. What are the, some of the things that you probably never thought you would be doing because of this work?
Well, I think it goes back to your earlier question about my reaction to participating in the fly-in. I think what I've learned through this process is that, the job of doing advocacy is not complicated. It really isn't. It's as simple as making an appointment to meet with someone who has influence over the issue and sharing your message. The message is easy. We live the message, so that's the easiest thing in the world to come up with. But it really is shoe leather. I mean, it's just about taking your time, which the flip side of that is one of the challenges, is because we get a bunch of people in a room and they all agree this is all very important. Yeah, we need to do that. And we come up with a few action plan items, and then we leave, and life happens, right?
Everybody has their own
People
lists.
leave. They leave with the best of intentions, and then as my former boss Warner Paige used to say, he had this saying about whenever we would go to conferences like NAMM or NASMD, and we'd fill up our notebooks with great ideas, right? He says, when you get back to the office on Monday morning, the very first thing happens is the toilet overflows.
Right.
It brings you back to reality.
Or someone lost their keys, right?
Right,
Or no one can get into the main.
So that stuff gets in the way of this. And so, it really, just like what I said earlier about you have to be relentless, and we have to be consistent taking our message out. We have to be consistent at communicating with our network, right, to remind them and urge them and encourage them
that they feel they're part of something.
Right.
So much of these things are, they're not concrete. They kind of live in the abstract.
They're a little squishy, like we like to say, right?
They live in the abstract,
right.
So, and a network of people that care, they have occasional meetings, but then they need to have the leadership of a steering committee or your volunteer leadership in all of it to point to some directions.
Right.
Now this is next.
Yep.
This is the next on the hit parade that we're doing.
Yeah.
And then some debate follows, but then over time it tends to embed in those organizations.
Yeah, I think that's an important component too, because you don't just flash on the scene and change the world, right? You come and you get to work, and you continue to work.
One of the realities of this work in our collective work as advocates is what everyone has said. To a person, no one objects to this.
Right.
But the challenge is to get folks to do something about it. And for us, it was on the federal level to insisting that it was in that new federal law, because that law might last for a very long time.
Right.
And then going on to the state level, as you've done, to insist that it's in the state language. So that's the doing of the something. Right? It's like doing it. So I think we'll always have that as a challenge. I mean, that's just a basic of a challenge of life, getting all the stuff that we want to get done. And then leading it is a whole nother opportunity that you've taken on.
Yeah.
Piece of your life that you're dedicating to it. And are you finding, are you getting back some things that you never thought you would get back, and that more frustration maybe?
A little of that.
Or as I said to other NAMM members that have taken this on, who sort of have bow their heads and shake their heads. They said, "Well, sorry, you're now a community organizer.
Right.
You're taking what you really care about and putting it into action on the policy level, on the communications level, on the networking level."
Yeah, I have a bit of capacity. As you know, I recently wrapped up a role with
you certainly have
with NAMM
capacity,
that took some time. So I have a little time to be able to do it. But I think more importantly, it's important to me personally. I mean, and I'm not so sure that what we do in the network is going to positively impact my business anytime soon. But that's not what it's about. It's about helping kids reach their potential, and ensuring that arts programs are strong for the next generation and the next generation. And so it's a passion project. It's something that's important to me personally, and so I'm in. I'm committed.
It's really to a person that we talk to on Talking at Music Education, our podcast, and folks that are doing this work in there. This is deep for us, right? I mean, our eyes have welled up over this.
Absolutely.
They have.
More than one time.
They have, I mean, being here with these music education, these kids that are I mean, they don't know the imaginations of what's around them to make that opportunity.
Right.
But, we kind of do, right? And then we cross over into that place to say, XYZ need to be here for that 10-year-old to come in to that first instrument.
Yeah. For sure.
So Yeah, it's a passion project, and
Right.
we're really grateful. Any final thoughts of all of us here in Indianapolis, your hometown, for this great event? Any final thoughts for us and the
Well,
work that we need to do
Just
together?
Yeah, just keep doing it. I think we keep learning along the way. Every step, as Joe Lamont likes to say, you feel your way across the river one stone at a time. I think that's the reality of advocacy, and we're not in it alone, right? So we have people that we can reach out to and connect with, and that's really important. So I've talked with handful of people that are doing the same thing in other states, and we get together and we talk. And how did you do this, and what did you do when this came up? And we have resources to help us with that.
And that was always the vision of the Support Music Coalition, was to become a learning network.
Right.
And I think that we just kind of keep growing. And now we have our Coalition on Coalitions, which is you helped us formulate. We have NAMM members that are sitting on the state planning at the table in states all across the country. So it's really, really interesting that their competency continues to rise, their networks in their states continue to rise.
Right.
And again, I get notes and responses from these folks, and it's because they really care. They really care deeply about this opportunity for kids in their state. So
Yeah,
great.
that's probably the most important component, is that you care.
Really
Because
care deeply. Yeah.
when you care, it shows in your actions and your emotions, and when you're having that one-on-one with someone of influence, they can see that. If you're just there spouting off some statistics that you don't really care about, they can see that too.
And in that way, we're so blessed with our network and with what we're working for.
Right. Thank
So-
goodness we're in the music and arts business,
Thank
right?
goodness we're in the music and arts business for more than one reason, more than many reasons. Well, Mark, what a great joy to see you here in Indianapolis,
You too,
to spend
Mary.
a little time with you. We've had quite a wonderful journey over the years.
Yes, we have, and it's not over.
It's not over. You're going to be a part of our Coalition on Coalition, our Support Music Coalition activity, and everything that happens at the NAMM Foundation. You just walked past your picture on the wall at NAMM headquarters last week.
I got moved,
the
right,
Great,
into
the hit parade of former chairmen. It's we're so lucky to have your great leadership and the leadership of so many in the NAMM community. So thank you for joining us here at the Facebook Live event. This will move to our podcast at Talking Up Music Education to become an episode in the next few weeks. But thank you for being with us. Share everything that we do at the NAMM Foundation for Advocacy. I think we need to do our own standalone brochure. A message from Mark Goff here. We've heard wonderful tips and ideas to be effective advocacy and to how to stay the course. So, Mark, thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
And thank you for joining us here at Talking at Music Education, a podcast of the NAMM Foundation.